So we've got two things today, or for this week. For the modules, we're in G5. So we're going to do two exercises today. The first one, I want to do kind of a little tools review. We're going to break down each tool again just by itself without kind of the stress of trying to model an object. We're just going to re-look at what the tools do more in an isolated way. And then after that, so we'll do that one together. And then after that, it'll be very similar to what we've been doing the past 2 weeks, modeling furniture, but you're going to be able to do your own this week. So let's go ahead and get into this first exercise. I also want to make sure, looking back at the last 2 weeks, we've had little to no time for work time at the end. So I want to try and set a little bit of boundaries with that, make sure that we will all have some time to work at the end. I don't want to be going up until the very last minute each time and then no one has time to work. So let's try and go through the assignments. If you have really quick little questions that don't take long to answer, we can look at them. But if you're really struggling, let's try to just save it to the end so I can walk around and help everyone. Okay, we'll go into exercise 5, our tools review. So go ahead and download this exercise 5 core tools SketchUp file. Just a little download button next to it. And an open file from there. I think I've already got it open. I do. So when it opens up, it should look like this. We've got 12 boxes of things to do. So each of the boxes, we're going to review a different tool in them. But very first, just want everyone to remember the commands that your mouse can do. So you use the scroll for moving closer and further away from your object. Sorry, I'm trying to get the assignment pulled up on my other screen here. So we'll get SketchUp and the assignment at the same time. Okay. So first of all, just your mouse, the scroll wheel, scroll in and out to get yourself closer and further away from the model. You can press and hold that scroll wheel to activate your orbit tool. And as you're holding that down, you'll just be able to orbit around. And you can release and keep on going. Each time you press it down, orbit will activate. And then even further from there, if you're pressing and holding down your scroll wheel, and you also hold down shift, that's going to activate pan for you, where you can move just left to right.
Oh, that makes life easy.
This is going to change my life.
That makes life easy. I didn't remember that.
I learned a lot of tools in this first month, so just
Now, what if your mouse isn't working?
find a new computer.
Yeah.
I do not know how to solve the mouse issue.
Anybody?
Just get on another computer, that one's messed up.
Or take one off of another computer and
Yeah.
switch it out.
Okay, so let's start to look at each of these boxes. So in box number 1, top left one. Let's look at the different ways that we can select and deselect objects. So there's not really going to be anything for me to really look at in this box whenever I go through and grade these. This is just you practicing how to select and deselect, because there are a lot of different ways that you can do it. So very first, obviously you just click on something to select one item, adding to your selection. If you'd like to continue to add to your selection, you want to select multiple objects, you hold down the shift key. When you hold down the shift key, the little plus minus sign comes up next to your cursor. That lets you know that you can both add and subtract from your selection. So if I hold down that shift key, I can keep on adding things. They're turning blue whenever they're added to the selection, or the surfaces turn into that kind of dotted hatch pattern. That lets you know it's selected. Still holding down the shift key, I can also deselect those items. The select key, or rather the shift key, allows you to both select and deselect items. If you want to be able to add only, you hold down the control key. So you see whenever I'm holding down control, you have the little plus sign next to your cursor. That lets you know that anything that you grab will add to your selection. So you can just keep on clicking things individually, edges turning blue, surfaces having that little dot pattern, letting you know that those are being added to your selection. And you can always look up at your entity info window in your default tray, and it's letting you know how many things you have selected. So right now I have 8 entities selected. Entity just meaning some object, a line or a surface or whatever it may be.
Where does it say you have it?
In your entity info drop down as part of the default tray. If you want to only be able to deselect, you hold down shift and control together. Whenever you hold both of those down, you've got the minus sign next to your cursor. So then I will only be able to take away from my selection. I won't be able to add anything.
Got it.
Other ways, if you know that you want to grab multiple things at once, you click and drag from the top left corner. So start at the top left, click and drag. You can see that selection window starting for you. This is going to select objects that are completely within that selection window. So whenever I release, anything that was inside of that selection window becomes selected. Now the object has to be entirely in that selection window for it to actually get selected. If I do that again, dragging from the top left, and I'm just going to release right here. So what we see here, I have the top, oh, this is a touchscreen computer, whoops, I should So my top line is completely within this selection window, and maybe this line on the left, the top, this line here, is completely within that window. Other things, they might be halfway in that window. Whenever I release, only those objects that are completely within the window will be selected. On the opposite way, if you start from the bottom right, click and drag, your selection window is more of that dashed line rather than a solid line. That'll select anything that is touching your selection window at all. So here, I don't have anything completely within that selection window, but whenever I let go, it's going to highlight anything that was even slightly inside of that selection window. We can also double click a surface to select the surface and its bounding lines. So if I double click this top one here, it went ahead and got me the surface as well as all of these lines that are bounding that surface. And then if I triple click any object, it's going to select anything that is touching. Now remember, if you have groups or components, those items are isolated and they will not be added to your selection with that triple click.
I have a question.
Yes.
How come, like when I was practicing going from the bottom with the dashed line, and I selected that, it selected the blue outline of the whole thing.
Because it's in your selection.
And it's in my selection. But then when I tried to hit Control Z to go back, it wouldn't go back and to my previous.
You don't necessarily undo a selection.
Oh, so
You can
how
just
does
click away from the selection, but there's not really anything to undo with
Right,
select.
now I clicked away and it went away. So
Yes.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, or you can hit the escape key to get rid of your selection.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so box number 1, we're just trying out all of those different ways to select get yourself comfortable with being able to select multiple objects and how those different ways can affect what's being selected or deselected. Box number 2. This is the Move tool. So for the Move tool, you select your objects, you activate the Move tool either with the icon, the 4 arrows, or it's M on your keyboard. That'll activate the Move tool. Let's go ahead and start. I'm going to select this line here. And to activate Move, I hit M on my keyboard. And then you want to click to choose a starting point. It's a great idea to find a really accurate point so that you can make accurate movements with the Move tool. So you click to choose a starting point. You can either just click to finish if you're trying to align it with something, or you can type in a specific measurement. Let's say 6 inches, so I would do 6 and enter. And that should move us 6 inches away from that starting point. So in box number 2, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to move the line in box number 2 6 inches to the right. So you first select your object, hit M on your keyboard to activate the Move tool, choose a point to start, and then move your mouse in the direction that you'd like it to go. In this instance, we're going to the right. And make sure that you're along that red axis. Use the inference engine to help you draw nice and parallel. And then for 6 inches, we're just going to hit 6 and enter. That should move it 6 inches to the right. Remember, SketchUp's default unit is inches, so when we do move it 6 inches to the right, you can just type 6. You don't have to specify the units. If it was in feet, you do have to specify the units. Box number 3 is the copy tool, which again, there's not really a copy tool. So for copying an object, you select the object, you use the Move tool, so M on your keyboard, and then you click Control to activate copy. You don't have to hold it down. You can just click it, and the little plus sign next to your cursor should show up. So I select my object, I hit M for Move, Control for copy. I'm not holding it down, but I can see the plus sign next to my cursor, so that lets me know that copy is indeed activated. And then it's just basically the Move tool, but it's going to leave a copy in its place. So for box number 3, we're going to copy the line 6 inches to the right. So I select the line, M for Move, Control for copy. I choose my starting point, I click there. I'm going to move my mouse to the right because we're copying over to the right, making sure I'm accurately along the red axis. And then I'm going to type 6, enter. And my original line is still there, and I've left a copy 6 inches to the right. Box number 4. We're going to use the push-pull tool. So you use the push-pull tool to extrude a surface. It turns a 2-dimensional surface into a 3-dimensional object. For this, we'll use the push-pull tool. You don't need to first select the surface. The push-pull tool, you can just activate it and go. It's an auto-select tool. So I hit P on my keyboard for push-pull, or it's up here at the top. It looks like a square being extruded up with the red arrow. And with the push-pull tool, when you hover over a surface, it'll turn that dot pattern kind of to let you know that that's the one that's going to be selected. You click on that surface. You don't have to drag it. You can just click it and then start moving your mouse in the direction that you want to go. Again, you can either click to end it, or you can type in that specific measurement. So I'm gonna click this, let's see here, box number 4, we're extruding the rectangle up 1 foot. So with the push-pull tool activated, I click on that surface, I start to move my mouse up along the blue axis, and we're doing 1 foot, so I could either type 12, and that's gonna give me 12 inches, or I can type 1 foot, specifying the units, and enter. Sure that went to 1 foot. Yes, it did. The push-pull tool will only extrude in the direction perpendicular to your surface. So I'm going to Control Z really quick. This surface, it'll only go perpendicular. I can't make it go on some random angle or anything like that. Push-pull tool is only going to go perpendicular to that surface. So if your surface is at an angle, then the extrusion is also going to go along that same angle. And then remember, if it does happen where you use the push-pull tool and you look back underneath, if this surface has disappeared, sometimes that happens, there are 2 ways we can fix it. We can either use the line tool to refill that face. So you can either just trace along one of the edges that's already there, and it'll refill that face for you. It kind of tells SketchUp like, oh, you're right, there is a closed loop here. I'll go ahead and fill that surface in. Or you can just undo your push-pull and try it again, but this time click that Control key. That plus sign comes back up. That just basically is telling me to copy that surface up. And that should stay there. Either way should work. If you just want to refill it or use that Control key. Yeah.
So how did you tell if it was open or not? It looked like maybe one color was blue and one color was gray.
Yeah, if you come back down here, if it's if there's something there, you'll be able to select it and it'll show the little dot pattern for you. If it has disappeared, you'll be able to see that your object is hollow. You can orbit in there and you'll be able to see everything on the inside.
Hmm.
And you can use that refilling face for anything. If you have another object over here and that surface has disappeared, you can always just retrace a line, and if it is all in a connected loop, SketchUp will refill that face for you. Okay, box number 5. Different ways to create objects. We've got several tools to help you create geometry. The ones that we've really been working with so far are the line tool, the rectangle tool, circle tool, and the 2-point arrow. So in box number 5, we're going to test all those out. Create a line that is 6 inches long. So you'll use the line tool, which either looks like your pencil up here, or you can click L on your keyboard to activate the line tool. And all you do is just choose a starting point. I'm just going to choose the intersection here. That's a nice clean point to start at. So you click your starting point, start to move your mouse in the direction you want to go. Again, best practice to try and model orthogonal lines along the axis. And we're doing 6 inches, so again, we can just type 6 and enter, and that gives us a line that is 6 inches long. And the pencil line tool, it has that rubber banding effect. That just means that it's going to keep on allowing you to create more lines until you either hit escape to get out of it, or you come back to a closed loop. That'll also make the line tool stop, and you'll see that that face automatically filled whenever I made that closed loop. Okay. create a rectangle that measures 3 inches along the red axis by 6 inches along the green axis in the positive directions. Remember, positive directions are when the axes are solid, and the negative direction is when the axis is more of that dotted pattern. Upper right quadrant, that's pretty typical to be the positive quadrant, even if you're just looking at like a graph or something. So for the rectangle tool, we can hit R on our keyboard, or it looks like a rectangle up here. It's got a little drop down. You can find the rectangle tool there. So we're doing 3 inches along the red by 6 inches along the green. I'm going to choose a starting point. Again, I'm just going to start at this intersection to make it a nice clean point for me to start. I can click on that point. For the rectangle tool, you can just click again to finish, and that'll create your rectangle. Or you can type in those specific measurements. So we click, move the mouse in the direction that we want to go, and then we type the red axis dimension first. So that's going to be our 3. You separate the dimensions using a comma, so a comma, and 6, enter. And that'll create your 3 inch by 6 inch rectangle. Or remember again, you could have just created a random rectangle and then immediately type in your 3,6 and it'll automatically resize for you, whichever way you prefer to do it.
Oh, mine is going kind of.
Let's see here, circle tool. That one is C on your keyboard, or it can be found in the same drop down where we grabbed the rectangle from.
What was the
Circle? C?
C?
Yes. So for this one, I guess I didn't create enough intersections for me to do 4. That's okay. Start where we'd like, as long as it's inside a box type. Alright, so for the circle tool, your starting point that you choose is the center of your circle. So I'm just going to choose the intersection here, click to start, and start to move your mouse outward. And for the circle tool, you have to specify the radius. So we want a circle that is 6 inches in diameter, so that gives us a 3 inch radius. So I just type 3 and enter. Same thing for the circle tool, you can just create a random size circle just by clicking to finish, but you can type in that specific measurement if you have a very specific size circle that you're going for. Same thing here, you can do that auto resize if you just create a circle of any random size, and then you immediately type in that radius and enter, it'll automatically resize for you just like with the rectangle tool. Yes?
I can't remember, is it always in radius, not in diameter?
Correct. Yeah, if you, when you're creating a circle, once you click on that center point and you start to move your mouse outward, you'll see down in your measurement box, it tells you that it's looking for the radius. Yeah, circle always wants the radius. So that's kind of what you're drawing here, right? You start from the center point and move outwards, so you're specifying that radius. And then lastly, in box number 5, we're going to create an arc that has a 6 inch diameter. So for the arc tool, separate drop down for all your different types of arcs. We're just looking at 2-point arc, that's A on your keyboard. So for this one, we first click a starting point. I don't really have a good intersection anymore, that's okay, I'm just going to start along the guideline.
Which arc was it? Just 3 point?
2 point.
2 point?
Yes. So you click on the starting point, and then for the arc, you are going to specify kind of the length of that arc, or kind of like the diameter of it if it were a circle, and it tells you again in the lower right that it's looking for that full length. So start to move your mouse in the direction you want to go, and we're looking for a 6-inch length here, so I'm going to type 6 and enter. And that kind of specifies that length there. It created us a second point for our 2-point arc. And then you move your mouse in the direction that you want that arc to go. Moving up along that green axis. It will snap for you at the half circle. So if you just kind of are slowly moving your mouse, it'll eventually snap for you at the half circle. Or you type in that specific radius or that dimension that you want for the bulge of the arc. Let's see here, we're looking for 3 inches here, so we can just type in 3 and enter.
Even though I put 6 in enter, nothing happened. I have a left one on.
Let's walk through it again.
Huh?
Let's show it again. So I'm hitting A on my keyboard to activate that 2-point arc.
Oh.
I'm gonna click once to start the arc,
Uh-huh.
and then I move my mouse in the direction that I want that to go,
Yeah.
and type 6, enter, and that should give you that second endpoint.
Enter. Oh, there, now it did.
Perfect. And then
Yes.
move your mouse up, and 3, enter for that bulge.
3 and enter.
Correct.
And then hit escape. Oh, no, that erased the whole thing.
Uh-oh.
Erased.
Let's look at it later.
Did
Okay,
you just hit the space?
couple of things
You
moved.
can do it again.
Yeah.
You can just do it again. Hit 2 on it.
I'll come help you at the end if you're still struggling with it.
Okay.
Alright, box number 6, the eraser tool. I think we might actually look at something new you can do with the eraser tool that we didn't look at before. So the eraser tool deletes objects. The eraser tool only works on lines, not surfaces. You can't use the eraser tool to erase a surface. For that, you just have to select the surface and click delete on your keyboard, or right click and hit delete. So the eraser tool looks like a nice little eraser up here, or you can just hit E on your keyboard. And then you just click the objects that you want to delete. So if I want to erase this first circle, or first line, I can just click on it and it erases. If I want to select multiple objects, or if I want to erase multiple lines at the same time, I click and drag. So I don't want to mess up anything that I have over here. I'm going to create a couple of lines. Okay, so I can just individually click each of these to erase them, or I'm going to Control Z to undo, or I can click and drag. And if I'm dragging across all of those, they all highlighted blue. That means those are the ones that are selected to erase. And then as soon as I let go of my mouse key, they'll erase. So you just click and drag to get rid of a lot of them at once. Wow. The eraser tool can also hide objects. So if you look down at the bottom, remember this is always letting you know what different modifier keys you can use to make the tool do something different. So we can do Shift to hide something. So whenever I hold down Shift, it might be hard to see up here on the big screen, but it kind of looks like a little eyeball that's closed. Looks like it's got eyelashes on it. That's kind of strange.
I see it.
So if you hold down that Shift key, that's going to allow you to hide an object whenever you click on it. And then if you hold down the Control key, that it gives you like a red squiggle line. That allows you to soften or smooth a line. Let's look at that as we move through the steps of this box. So the first line, we're just going to erase it. So without any modifier keys, just the eraser tool, go ahead and click on that top line to erase it. For the second line, we're going to hide it. So for hide, you hold down Shift, and then click on that second line, it looks like it erased.
Mhm.
You might think it disappeared. But if we go up to view and we select hidden geometry, sometimes you also need hidden objects turned on. You'll see that line is still there, but it's dashed right now. So that's just allowing you to see what objects are hidden. So ones that are that dashed line, it's just hidden. You can always unhide something by turning on those hidden objects, hidden geometry, and then right-clicking the geometry and click unhide. That'll bring it back. Now it looks normal again. But for this assignment, go ahead and keep it hidden. So again, with the eraser tool, hold down Shift and click on that line.
And then go back and undo the hidden geometry thing.
Yep, you can always go back up to view and uncheck hidden geometry, hidden objects, and you shouldn't be able to see it anymore. And then this last thing here, with this weird object, we're going to use the eraser tool to soften the common edge of the two adjacent planes. So we're going to soften this edge that's right here. So right now it just looks like a normal line. It's pretty abrupt. You know, it's still a nice thick line. But sometimes you want it to kind of disappear. You want it to look softer. So for that, we can use the eraser tool. And we hold down Control. And if I click on that line there, it kind of disappears and everything looks nice and smooth.
Nice.
How would that vary from just hiding it?
Let's take a look.
Oh, my line looks dashed.
You probably have hidden objects and hidden geometry still turned on. Go back up to view and uncheck your hidden geometry, hidden objects.
There we go, thank you.
So if we just hid this line, that's holding down Shift. Alright, click on that. It still kind of looks the same. It's just that you don't necessarily see that black line.
Yeah,
But the soften kind of smooths everything together.
okay, makes sense.
Maybe you've got a fancy chair you're working on, or just want something to look real nice and smooth. That smooth can help you. So that was again holding down the Control key with the eraser tool.
Nice.
You can do these same things. We're going to Control Z again. You can just right click on an object and you'll see that hide is there as well as soften. So you can do it that way too. But just know that the eraser tool can also do those things.
How'd you get there? Right click.
Right click. Yes. And I can soften that. And then again, if you want to be able to see that, you go back up to showing your hidden geometry, hidden objects, and you can just right click and unsoften it.
And what was the difference between erase and soften?
Erase completely gets rid of it. So if I were to erase this line, I no longer have surfaces because SketchUp's like, well, you erased my bounding lines. How am I supposed to create a surface? So it helps whenever you still need those surfaces there, but just don't necessarily want to see that harsh line. Okay, let me re-soften. There we go. And again, if you're seeing that dashed line, just go up to view and uncheck your hidden geometry, hidden objects. Box number 7, the offset tool. So the offset tool copies a path the same distance in all directions. To offset the boundary lines of a surface, you select the offset tool, click on the surface, move your cursor either inside or outside the surface, depending on which way you'd like to offset it. And then you can type a specific measurement. So for this surface here, the rectangle in box number 7, we're going to offset the lines 1 inch inside of the rectangle. So whenever you have a surface, you don't need to select it first. You can just go ahead and use the offset tool on it. So that is F on your keyboard, or in your tools, it looks kind of like a half circle that's being offset outward. So whenever you have the offset tool activated, you can hover over your surface, and again, that dotted pattern shows up, letting you know that that's the surface that we're gonna offset the lines of. So whenever you click on that surface, you can move either inward or outward. Again, I just clicked, I'm not dragging. So we're gonna go 1 inch inward. So move your mouse inward and type 1, enter. And that should have offset 1 inch in all directions. Again, with this offset tool, you can just click to start, click to finish, but if you want that specific measurement, you click to start, type measurement, and enter. And then these two lines down here, the offset tool does work on lines that aren't necessarily making a surface, but the only difference here is that you need to go ahead and select those lines first. SketchUp can't automatically select multiple lines at once for you to offset. So we go ahead and select those lines that we want to offset, hit F on your keyboard to activate the offset tool, and we're going to offset these lines 1 inch outward. So we click on the line, start to move your mouse outward, and again, you can just click to finish, but since we've got a specific measurement, we'll go ahead and type 1, enter. And you'll notice here whenever I offset these lines for the surface, it did go ahead and separate those two surfaces because SketchUp says, hey, I've got all bounding edges here, this surface is now separate from that one. So if for some reason it all still looks like one surface, everything has got that dot pattern when you select one, that just means somewhere your line is not enclosed all the way. Whenever it does form a closed loop, those two surfaces will separate. Alrighty, box number 8. We'll do the rotate tool. So use the rotate tool to rotate an object, and you can use a specific angle for that. So you first want to select the object that you rotate, activate the rotate tool, that's Q on your keyboard. You click once to choose a starting point, click again to specify kind of your starting line, and then you can type the angle that you want to rotate the object by. So the very first line here in box number 8, we're going to rotate 90 degrees. And we're going to choose the midpoint as kind of our starting point for the rotation. So we first select the line, hit Q on your keyboard to activate that rotate tool. You want to be cognizant of what axis you're aligning with. So if your protractor rotate tool looks blue, that means that your objects are going to rotate along the blue around the ground plane. If it's on red or green, it's going to rotate more on the side at a different angle. So just be aware of what color your rotate tool looks like. You can move around to different surfaces and it'll flip, what way you're rotating. Just so that we see, let's go ahead and I'm just going to show you the different ways that it looks depending on blue, red, or green. If I want to rotate this cube, if I'm on the blue, it's just going to rotate here along the ground plane. If I'm on the green, it's going to rotate kind of along its side. And then same thing with the red, along its side, but just in the other direction. So just be aware of what side or axis that you're rotating along. Okay, so back to box number 8. Select your line, activate rotate, and we're going to start at the midpoint. That's going to be our center of rotation. So go ahead and find the midpoint using the inference engine. It'll tell you when you're snapping to that midpoint. So you click there, and then start to specify just kind of a starting angle. You just choose one of the axes, the red one is good. And so then click again to kind of start it. And then you'll move in the direction that you want to go. SketchUp does snap to every 15 degrees. So if you move really slowly, your mouse will kind of stop on each 15-degree interval. But you can also type in that specific measurement. So we can type in 90 for 90 degrees, hit enter, and it rotates at 90 degrees. And you'll see it rotated it about the midpoint, because that's where we chose for our center of rotation to be. Question, Monique?
You know how yours stayed blue? Mine keeps wanting to go red. Like when you try to move
Yeah,
over.
mine, I tried to change color.
Oh, never mind. I was
Your
clicked in it.
color?
I was clicked in it. Never mind. I get it.
If you can't find
I get it.
the axis that you want for your rotate, you can use your arrow keys left and right, goes between red and blue, and then use the up arrow. That'll get it to the blue.
Oh.
So, what name?
I did not know that.
Once you activate rotate, you can
Okay.
use your arrow keys, left and right for blue and green, and up for blue.
Oh, okay.
And you can hold down the shift key to keep it locked on
Yeah.
that axis. Oops, yeah, I did this one. Okay, and then the second one,
Uh-oh.
second line, we're gonna rotate again 90 degrees, but we're gonna specify the bottom end point as our center of rotation. Just kind of see what the difference is there, how it looks different. But we're also gonna copy this rotation. So the very first one, we just rotated the original line. We're gonna go ahead and leave the second line here, and we're gonna rotate a copy in its place. So same way to start, select on your line, activate the rotate tool with Q on your keyboard. We're gonna specify the bottom end point here for your center of rotation. Go ahead and specify a place to start.
You said the bottom?
Yes, the bottom end point.
Right. And then you click once you specify that?
Correct. Just click there,
Okay.
and then click somewhere along like the red axis or something to kind of start that starting angle. And then we're gonna copy this one, so we're gonna go ahead and click the control key to start the copy. You can click control at any time during the rotation process. It doesn't have to be after the second click or anything like that. Just click control at any point. As long as you see that plus sign come up next to your cursor, you know that it's activated. And so again, we're gonna do the 90 degrees, so take 90, enter, and you should be left with more of an L shape.
I'm just not understanding.
Yeah,
I guess
like
I'll get with you
twice.
after the class.
Yeah, so I clicked up on that too. So she clicked the starting and the direction, and then you had to click again to get that other line to move.
Yeah, I'm just not getting it. My thing keeps going all over the place. I don't know if my hand placement is, I don't.
I can do it again.
Yeah. I'm just not understanding.
Yeah, just go ahead and watch. So we select the line,
Mhm.
hit Q to activate the rotate
Right,
tool.
I got that.
Our first click is gonna be where we want the center of rotation to be. So for this second line, we're gonna do our bottom end point.
Right.
So once you're there, go ahead and click on that end point. That's click number one.
Okay.
Click number two is just kind of locating a starting point for your rotation. So it can really be anywhere. So just go ahead and move your mouse away from that center of rotation and then click again.
Oh, that's
So we're
when
doing
you
two
click.
clicks before we even start to rotate.
Oh, okay, that's why I wasn't tracking. Okay.
And then since we're doing a copy, we're gonna go ahead and click control. Again, you can click control at any point during this process.
Okay.
Start to move your mouse for the rotate and type 90, enter.
And it's tricky because like I would have thought
Okay.
you're moving that bottom end point, you're swaying that, but it's almost like the clock, that
Yeah.
line, it's that one's weird.
Your first point that you choose is what will stay in place.
Will stay in place.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where everything is gonna
You'd think
rotate
you
about.
would, you'd think you'd select what you want to move. Okay, that's why the clock thing was.
Okay, I get it now. I was holding it down the whole time and that's why it kept going. Okay, I got it.
2
Thank you.
clicks, and then your rotation. Okay, box number 9. We're gonna use the flip tool here. So use the flip tool to mirror an object about a specific axis. You wanna first select the object that you're gonna mirror, select the flip tool, which kind of looks like a triangle being flipped about a red dashed line. And then you click the axis that you want to mirror about. So the first group here, this is already in a group for you, so you can just click on it once, and that highlights the whole group. This first one, we're going to flip it just about the red axis. So select your group, grab the flip tool, and you see the 3 different axis planes come up. We're going to do the red one. All you have to do is click on that red one, and it flipped. You can see that the hole is now on the opposite side of that red plane.
How did you know it was grouped? Like, how would you know?
Wait, if you just click on it,
Yeah.
up in your entity info, it tells you it's a group. But also, if it was a bunch of individual parts and pieces, let me go over here, I'm gonna explode this group. If it was, so if I select on this surface over here, it grabbed everything.
Yeah.
If I select this one, it only grabbed the one surface and it's got that dot pattern on it. And it tells me in my entity info, I've just got a face selected.
How's it supposed to look now?
So this is what we started with. The hole is on the bottom right. Again, we select the object, get your flip tool, click on the red axis, and now the hole is in the bottom left.
Okay.
For the second object,
I have a little question. So mine says when I try to do it, it says you must first select a single face or 2 or more simply connected.
so go ahead and select your object first before you try to use the flip tool.
I did it and then I made it into a component. So it's called.
You shouldn't have to make it into a component. All we're doing is flipping.
Yeah, so all of it's blue, and then I'm pressing for flip, and then it's telling me that.
F is offset.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, flip doesn't have a default hotkey. You have to actually go grab it or make your own hotkey.
So no F for flip.
No, F is offset.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Flip off.
How quickly, okay. You have to hit the mirror, that
Yeah, that triangle.
triangle thing.
You're right.
I wish they would call it the
There
mirror
isn't-
button, 'cause
There
it's
isn't
so
a shortcut key for it, or is there?
There's not.
Okay.
You can make one. You can create one, but
I'm not gonna.
a little too complicated. That's okay.
Yeah, you just go ahead over there and let us know.
Okay, let's look at the second one. The second group, again, this is already a group.
Right.
This one, we're gonna, again, copy it about the red axis. But this time, we're gonna move the red axis to be in line with the left edge of the group. So let's work through that. First, select your group. Grab that flip tool. So if I just click on the red, that's gonna flip it with where the red is located right now. That's gonna be kind of the center of that mirroring. So if we wanna move it, we don't necessarily wanna flip it right in place. Click and drag that red plane. And we can align it with the left edge of the group by just hovering over an endpoint of your group or something that snaps to the left end of that group. And then as soon as you let go of your mouse, it'll flip over it.
Oh, could you show that again? I finally was starting to drag it, and I.
Yeah, I'm gonna Control Z to undo. Select your group, grab the flip tool, click and drag your red plane here, and go align it with an endpoint just by maybe hovering over the endpoint of the group. And then as soon as you let go of your mouse key, it's gonna flip over that new location of the red axis plane.
How do I know if there's it's on the.
You'll find a little dot, like a little dot.
Yeah, the inference engine will help you out there.
Is there?
Am I there?
Yeah, because
Oh,
the inference engine came on, it said endpoint.
okay.
Yep, once you snap to that endpoint there, let go, and it'll flip.
Oh,
Something that we didn't practice with this box, you can also hit the control key here to create a copy of the flip. So that the original stays in place and it's just a copy that's flipped. So this isn't in the instructions for you to do, but let's just look at what that looks like if we were to do it. Select the object, grab the flip tool, go ahead and click control. Control is always going to be your copy. Once I click on control, again I just clicked it, I don't need to hold it down. The plus sign is next to my cursor. And then I can click and drag that red axis plane, align it to my endpoint, let go. My original is still in place, and it's a copy that's been flipped.
Yep.
Oh, are we making a copy now?
No,
You don't have
she's
to,
just
that's-
showing us.
Yeah, I didn't write that as part of the instructions, but just so we're all aware that the flip tool can leave a copy in place.
Oh.
Yeah, yours should look just like two, whenever you're done. Control.
Control.
Copy is always control.
Before we start moving.
Yes. All right, box number 10, so the scale tool. So the scale tool, S on your keyboard, you use it to resize an object. So you need to first select the object or objects that you want to resize, activate the scale tool, and then you kind of start to choose which grips you want to use. So in box number 10, we're going to scale this top rectangle by 50%. So that'll make it a half size. And we're going to do it about the center point. So first we need to select the whole rectangle. I want to select the surface plus all of its edges, so go ahead and double click it, and you should see the edges all highlighted blue. Your entity info tells you you've got 5 entities selected. So once you've got that all selected, you grab the scale tool. It's either up here, it's a rectangle getting bigger, or you can hit S on your keyboard. And once you do that, you've got those green grips. They are on the corners as well as all of the midpoints. And then for scaling about the center, you click on control, and that red grip comes out in the middle, letting you know that your scale is all going to move with the center point staying in place. So we're going to do 50%. You can't type 50% into SketchUp, you have to do 0.5 for 50% half size.
Do we have to keep holding control?
Nope, you can just click it.
Okay.
And then as long as that red grip is in the center, you're good to go. It's going to scale about the center.
Nothing's happening when I'm hitting 0.5 in the little box at the bottom.
We're not there yet at the 0.5. We've just got our control clicked to show that center point.
Okay.
And then you grab one of your grips, the corner grips, it tells you if you hover over it, that's going to be a more uniform scale. If you grab one of the side grips, the midpoint ones, that just scales about that certain axis. So this one tells you it's the green. So let's go ahead and do a uniform scale. So grab one of the corner grips. So click on that grip, start to move your mouse, and then you type in the 0.5, enter.
Do we want 0.5, do we want to move the box in or out?
0.5 will automatically do 50%, which is half size. So it'll go
And
inward.
you do.
So it'll become smaller.
Correct.
Yeah.
Why,
Then it becomes small.
what confused me is why you hit control to get the red dot when you said control was meant copy everything. I wouldn't have known that.
That is a little bit confusing. However, it'll always tell you in the bottom left whenever you have a tool activated, it lets you know what modifier keys are available to you
Oh.
and what they will
I
do.
see. Shift, toggle.
Not just Michaela telling us, but the
That's right.
Got it.
You've also got your instructor over here in your default tray. Let me get that a little bit bigger. The instructor is also going to give you some tips. Whenever you have a tool activated, it tells you how it works, any of your modifier keys, and any tips that it might have for you. And again, we do scaling about the center. That will make the entire object move inward towards the center or outward away from the center. In the second object here, we're going to look at how it's different if we don't specify the center as that scaling point. So for the cube here, we're going to scale the cube by 150%, so that will make it a half size larger. So the cube is already, it's not into a group. Well, that's okay, it doesn't have to be. So since it's not a group already, so you see I clicked on it and it's the default tray, entity info tells me I've only got one face selected. That's okay, just make sure that you grab the entire cube. So select all of those edges and surfaces, maybe with your selection window, maybe you triple click to grab everything, just make sure that it's all selected. So for this one, again, once we've got that selected, hit S for your scale tool. We've got a lot more grips on this one because this is a three-dimensional object rather than just a two-dimensional surface. So we've got lots of options to choose from. With this one, we're going to scale about the lower right corner. So I want the lower right corner to be the point that remains in place. Everything is going to scale towards it.
The bottom, right?
The bottom right corner. So to do that, if we want the bottom right to stay in place, we have to select the opposite grip. So in this case, it's the top left that we're going to select. So we click on that top left, and now everything is moving towards that bottom right corner. The bottom right stays in place since we selected that opposite grip. And so whenever I start to move my mouse, I can type 1.5 enter, and now my cube should be a half size larger.
It started moving automatically. When I hit the bottom corner, it automatically went to the other top left corner.
Yeah, mine did too.
Let's try it again.
And it's not staying in place. The bottom keeps moving around.
Yeah, mine did too.
Let's try it again.
Let me
Select the whole cube. Hit S for scale. We want the lower right to stay in place, so we're going to grab the top left.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
And just click on that grip. You don't need to drag it, we're just clicking on that top left grip.
Okay.
Move your mouse, type 1.5 enter, and it gets 150% larger.
Great.
Bada bing, bada boom. Okay. 2 more boxes. Box 11. The tape measure tool. You use the tape measure tool to measure the distance between objects. So for that, to activate the tape measure tool, it either looks just like a tape measure up in the top, or you hit T on your keyboard to activate that. So to measure the distance between two objects, you just click on your first point and or hover over your second point. I like to hover because it just leaves that little box there for you, letting you know that it's the 6 inches. If you click on it, it doesn't tell you the measurement there, so I like to just hover over that second. And you can see once I did that click, it created a guide point for me. That's not necessarily what I wanted, I just wanted to measure it. So I click on the first endpoint, and I hover over the second endpoint, and that'll tell me what that distance is. So then we can also use the tape measure tool to create those guidelines and guide points. To create a guideline, you click on a line that's already created in your model, or you can click on one of your axis lines. Like the red axis here, we can click on that to start a guideline. But you just click on the line and start to move your mouse, and that infinite line will start to appear, and that line will be created parallel to whatever line you started off with. For a guide point, you start by clicking an endpoint. Click on that endpoint and click again, and there will be a point that is created wherever you finished it. So that's the difference between being able to create a guide line and a guide point. If you want a guide line, you start with a line. If you want a guide point, you start on a point.
So the guideline, you started kind of in the middle of the line.
Right.
So in
Just
other
as
words,
long as you're not
needed-
on a point.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can click anywhere along this line. Even if you grab like the midpoint, even that is gonna give you the guide point. So it has to be somewhere along the line that's not a specific point. Not an end point, not a midpoint, not an intersection of anything.
And then it'll create a guideline.
Correct.
Or you have-
Okay.
So in box number 11, we're gonna measure the distance between these two lines. And then we're gonna create a guideline that same distance away to the right of the second line. So let's first figure out the distance between the two lines. Hit T on your keyboard to activate that tape measure tool. Click on the first line. And then hover over a point of the second line, so that tells me it's 6 inches away. So then we're gonna create a guide line 6 inches to the right of the second line. So still with your tape measure activated, click on that second line, move your mouse along the red axis, and type 6, enter. And then we can just measure and make sure that it's the 6 inches. Click on that second line, hover over the guideline, and that is 6 inches. Last box, number 12. Groups and components. We create groups and components in SketchUp to isolate specific geometry. This can be beneficial if you're going to create multiple copies of an object or to avoid that stickiness effect where everything is kind of fused together. Stickiness can get in the way when you want to move objects, but if they're all fused together, it's going to be really hard to be able to separate those things. So we like to create groups and components to keep things isolated, organized, not stuck to each other. So to create a group, you select all the objects that you want to be in that group, right-click, and choose Make a Group. For a component, same process, select all the objects that you want to be in the component, right-click, and make a component. The difference between the groups and the components is that groups only isolate the geometry, components will be tied to each other when you continue to make copies. When you change one, it'll change all. With both groups and components, you edit them by double-clicking into them, or you can also right-click and hit Edit Group or Edit Component, whichever one it is. Everything that's not inside the group or component will turn gray. That lets you know that those are outside of the group. You're not able to edit those. It's just going to be the things that are inside of the group or component. For ungrouping or exploding, you right-click a group or a component and choose Explode. And we can make copies of both, but again, let's look at the differences between them. So in box 12, go ahead and make a group of the first cube. So we're going to select all of the geometry of this cube, again, either with a selection box or triple clicking. Just make sure that you've got everything selected. The edges are blue, the surfaces have that dot pattern, we've got it all. And then right-click on the object. If I right-click outside of the object somewhere, it's not going to really have the same options. So once you have that selected, make sure that your mouse is still on those objects and right-click and make a group. And now your entity info tells you that that has turned into a group. And then we are going to copy the group. So let's do that first. Have your group selected. We're not double clicking into it. We're not editing it in any way. We just simply want to make a copy of it. So we select the group, M for move, click Control for copy. And I didn't tell you how far away to copy it, so just copy it somewhere. Just maybe somewhere over to the right. And then now we're going to double click into that copy that we created. That gets you into the edit mode. You see everything else turned gray. I've got this dashed box all around my cube letting me know that whatever's inside of those dashed extents is what's inside of my group. So we're going to push pull the top surface 1 foot up along the blue axis. So hit P for push pull. Click on that top surface, move your mouse up and type 1 foot, enter. 1 foot.
Just the top surface?
Just the top surface.
Start putting it in 1 foot.
Yep. And you'll see that your first group didn't change. It still remains the same. Because groups are not tied to each other when you make copies of them.
Oh, that's a good example, yeah.
It's a separate group.
Correct.
Got it.
Components, on the other hand, we'll do that with the second box down here, the second cube. We'll go ahead and make a component of it. So select that entire cube, all of its edges and surfaces. Right click on that cube and hit make component. And then our little dialog box pops up so we can name our component. Let's see, we're going to call it cube. And we're not really concerned about all these fancy options, just make sure that replace selection with component is checked. We'll hit create.
Oh wait, so make sure what's checked.
Replace selection with
At the
component,
bottom.
the very bottom option, the little checkbox.
When you go make a component.
Let me pull it back up.
Yeah.
Grab everything, right click, make component, call it a cube, and just this very bottom option, replace selection with component, you do want that checked. That makes it so that what is selected becomes the component. You can create a component without that geometry turning into the component. I don't really know why you want to do that, but it's an option, so I just always make sure that this is checked so that the component is created in that spot. So then I hit create, and that all turns into a component. And we also saw over on our default tray the components drop down. This shows you all the components that's in your model. If you click on the little house button there that says in model, that'll show you all the components that are here in your model. And you see all those numbers, because that's all the stuff that I created as part of this assignment. But you should see in that list is your cube. That's the cube you just created.
Yeah.
In what part of the development? Under component?
Under components.
I
Yes.
see it now.
On the right. Your list.
Select or edit?
You just hit the little house button, and that
Oh,
takes
the
you to
house
what's in the
button.
model. Yes. Yep, that's all the components that are in your model.
Oh, right.
And we also saw that we could just drag from there. If I wanted to create another instance of that cube, we could just drag and place a new one.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and create a copy of this one, just the old-fashioned way. Select the component. We're not editing it just yet. We're just selecting the component. M for move, Control for copy, and then just copy that cube somewhere over to the right. And then we're going to double click into that copy you just created to open up its editing mode. And again, we're going to push pull the top surface 1 foot up. So P for push pull.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Yes, you can.
Since I'm still in the move tool and I hit double click, but nothing happens, do I need to exit the move tool first?
Correct.
So to do that, do I hit escape?
Space. Just
Hit the space bar.
Or
Yeah,
space?
that'll take you back to.
Thank you, I've been having trouble with that all evening, I'm glad
Yes.
we cleared that up. Okay, now, sorry to interrupt, and then double click on it.
Yep, double click into the copy we just created.
Thank
Select that top surface and move 1 foot, enter. And you'll see that the original came with me, because they're components, they're tied to each other.
Mhm.
What you change one, it's gonna change them all.
Twinsies.
They're twinsies. How do you make them not twinsies anymore? Well, let's go ahead and make another copy.
Uh-oh.
So this second cube here that we have, let's go ahead and copy it. So M for move, Control for copy, copy it somewhere to the right. So now we've got 3 of those guys. But let's say we want to make this one a little bit different. We want to kind of sever that tie between this copy and the other ones. We right-click that component and hit Make Unique. It still stays as a component, so we don't need to go back through the process of making it a component. It's still a component, but if you look up at the definition inside of your entity info, it now says cube number 1 rather than just cube. That lets us know that it's different. It's now a different one. And you can change the name of it. I could come in here and name this whatever, new cube.
The definition.
The definition is the name of it.
Yeah, cute.
So these 2 are still cube, and you can see my entity info tells me that there are 2 in the top. That's true, I've got 2 here.
Yeah.
And then this third one that we created, there's just 1, and it's my new cube that I renamed it to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I finally made the 3rd cube, then how do you make it unique again?
Right
Right.
click,
Double click, triple click on it though first.
Triple click
Yeah,
on it first?
it
Right.
should already still be a component.
Oh, right click, okay,
Yeah.
now,
Make you.
Just
Make
right click and
unique.
make unique.
then hit make unique,
Yes.
oh, okay.
And now, let's go ahead and double click into your new cube, your unique one. And if we push pull that top surface down 1 foot, the others aren't changing.
Yep.
They've stayed the same, they're doing their own thing. My new cube is doing its own thing.
It's living its best life.
That's right.
Uniquely.
1 foot, and now it's backwards.